What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we are jumping in with some Destiny 2 news updates. And of course, this is coming in the form of this week at Bungie being a Thursday. So it is the first TWAB of April, and so Bungie do talk a little bit about some of the changes that they'll be bringing in the April update. That'll be update 2.8.1, and they do discuss stats that they will be bringing back to emblem trackers in that update. And so we'll talk about that. And of course they address known issues in the game at the moment. But Bungie also jump in and respond to a lot of feedback about new DLC content, and Trials in particular is a big focus, so Bungie have a few different things to touch on about how they're looking at those conversations. And they address other community feedback about seasonal content. But then we have a few other things to round up in the video as well. So guys, I hope you enjoy this one as always, but now let's get into it. And so initially, Bungie talk about the roadmap for this season. We have seen the Fourth Horseman, a couple of the bunkers, trials, and things like that, but they say that on Tuesday, the final Seraph bunker will open on IO, and new Seraph weapons and seasonal mods enter the mix, giving you more options to build your monster killing machine. And then later in the month, Guardian Games will kick off some good old-fashioned Guardian rivalry, accompanied by the Grandmaster Nightfall difficulty. That's going to be coming in the April update, and they do speak about update 2.8.1. And specifically about stat trackers, they say, with the overhaul in the previous update, previously featured stat trackers were removed, and players were quick to highlight this as a pain point, which we're eager to address. So this week, we have a list of the stats we'll be bringing back. And once again, that is in the April update later this month. So we can see for seasons, they're going to let us track forge completions. And then all of the trackers below are hidden if their value is 0, and that includes Season 8, Season Pass rank earned, the same for Season 9, the number of Tier 3 encounters completed in Reckoning, Fractaline donated, Menagerie completions, Heroic Menagerie completions, the kills of Haunted Forest Terrors, Deepest Branch of the Haunted Forest, completed branches of the Verdant Forest, Revelrit-like triggers, Candy collected, and recipes baked. And then for a count, it's going to track Heroic missions completed, and then kills for every single subclass. That's definitely a positive, and we can see right here that they're adding a bunch of different medals back for the Crucible. So we've got gold medals earned, longest glory win streak, total valor resets, Iron Banner rank, gold medals earned in the Iron Banner bounties completed. And then all of the trackers below are hidden if their value is 0, but that includes wins in Trials of the Nine, flawless tickets in Trials of the Nine, 7th column medals, annihilation medals, undefeated medals, we ran out of medals, Ghost in the Night medals, the crown is mine, I made this for you, and then kills in Crimson doubles, as well as kills under the effects of Iron Burden. But also kills of final bosses in Escalation Protocol, available on Mars and Escalation Protocol and emblems, all of the trackers for Lunar emblems, so Nightmare Hunts, on Master difficulty, and Pit of Heresy solo flawless completions. For Gambit it will track Infamy rank resets, and then for raids, Prestige Leviathan completions, and that's available on Leviathan and Guided Games emblems, Prestige Eater of Worlds completions, and that's for Eater of Worlds and Guided Games once again, but then Prestige Spire of Stars, and finally, Nightfall Challenge completions. And Bungie say, if you do have any feedback about the stats they're returning, be sure to let them know. But of course it is positive that we're getting some of those stats back. They will be tracked retroactively, which is definitely important. Now there's been a lot of feedback about Trials, and Bungie say they wanted to talk through some topics they've been exploring and give some basic thoughts on what they'd like to approach in the future. So for card rewards, Bungie say they've been discussing feedback around the lack of incentive for players to go flawless, and they understand that some players have found the first few games to be more lucrative, which they'd love to shift to the later games. Early card token farming, as some would call it, is something that we're very interested in solving, and we want to make sure that every Destiny player who wants to play Trials has something to show for it at the end of a weekend. Additionally, we have seen feedback that the Flawless Chest isn't comparable to the rewards associated with grinding out Nightfalls, and this is something that we'd love to improve upon. There are quite a few ways we could approach this, and we're currently discussing what would be the best for Trials in the long run. In addition to this though, for disconnects, they say they've been investigating an issue that prevented us from enabling rejoin options when Trials launched. And they go on to say they are currently planning to enable rejoin in Trials in update 2.8.1, so that is in the April update. And that means if you get kicked, there is an opportunity potentially to rejoin that game after the update that we get next. But then for fair play, Bungie say that they've seen reports from players that have encountered cheaters in Trials over the last few weekends. They say some issues may not be addressed for quite some time, as we're early in conversations, but wanted to give you an update on what's going on behind the scenes. So They say the anti-cheat is not as visible by design as some security products. However, we regularly detect and remove thousands of malicious accounts from the PvP ecosystem. They say they continue to implement new anti-cheat improvements during patch releases, and are always investigating new approaches as cheat developers adapt to the latest tech. And many of the cheats that you find in the wild already have detections and countermeasures deployed, with work being done consistently to keep them updated against new threats. But because cheat developers don't stop, we know we have to keep working on improving those systems. They also say they're working with platform partners to identify ways in which they can further strengthen security, and investigating ways in which players can let them know when reports have resulted in a permanent or a temporary restriction. They also point out once again that if you suspect players are cheating, you should use the suspected cheating contact form. And so that's in this week at Bungie, linked down below. And they essentially say they know that players are pretty desperate for some of these changes to come into the game, and they are totally things that they're working on for further down the road. And so we'll have to wait and see what Bungie say next, although we have got minor quality of life updates like the rejoin that we'll be getting in April. So give us your thoughts about that down below, guys. We will touch on more feedback in a moment, but Bungie do point out current known issues, and they are investigating watercress and new terrors, as well as the fact they've disabled Felwinter's helm, and are investigating reports of players who have had emblems blacked out completely with power appearing as 0 in the roster tab of the director. The level 32 PDS upgrade can only be used to clear the bunker by the character who unlocked the EDZ bunker, and then Rasputin's daily Seraph weapon can only be claimed on the character that players were on when rank 92 of the season pass was unlocked. And then the Cloak of the Exile Trials armor is not glowing properly when going flawless in Trials of Osiris, and Celestial Fire not triggering Warlord Sigil on Winter's Guile, as well as the fact that the lore piece, By Thy Tongue Be Damned, is not properly unlocking for players. So those are some issues that Bungie are currently tracking, and that's the bulk of the stuff they have in this week at Bungie. Another quick shout before we move on. My friend Jarv did post a video about double loot that you can get right now inside of Nightfall Ordeals. And that's by playing specific difficulties at the moment with all of the champions on, and that's the modifier available this week. Actually pretty useful if you're after farming materials but various loot drops, stats, exotics or anything like that. So just a quick shout out to that, and I will link that video down below if you do want to check it out. Moving away from this week at Bungie Stuff for just a moment though. Earlier on this week, at the weekly reset, players on Reddit did start pointing out that Today in Destiny was actually displaying a hidden upcoming mission in the game. We briefly touched on this when the reset happened on Tuesday, but it does turn out that it was an early April Fool's joke essentially, where JP Deathblade over at Today in Destiny added a fake mission taking place in the Iron Tomb to the listings for the content for the week. So they tricked a few players for about an hour, but they did come out and confirm before too long that it was just an early April Fool's joke. So that's something to bear in mind. However, the separate leaks about Guardian Games content, so the heir apparent exotic machine gun, and the other even more spoiler territory stuff, some of the upcoming content that we'll see between Rasputin and Felwinter, and the return of a particular weapon from D1 which we spoke about in the previous video. So as far as we know, those pieces of information are reliable from these sources as always. But Bungie community managers did respond to some feedback about some of the seasonal content. So Cosmo said we're always looking to create a menagerie of activities to give different flavors of fun for players depending on their mood, how far along they are in progression. Some players enjoy collecting everything, and others like the feeling of overcoming a really difficult encounter, and many just like to recline back and mow down some monsters with space magic. And so Mythical Sniper on the Bungie forum said, we're all at 960, and while the new activity was 980 recommended, the bunker was 1000 power, and then legendary lost sectors were 1030. Why did you make the lost sectors 1030? The average player can only reach 1000. Do you really expect us to increase the artifact to plus 30 power? And Cosmo says, we definitely didn't expect most players to increase the artifact by 30. The legendary lost sectors are set at 1000 power, not 1030. And we expect them to be challenging early on and then become more manageable as players power up and eventually overpower them with a combination of pinnacle rewards and artifact power. The bunkers scale with players similar to how Gambit works, so they will maintain a similar difficulty at 750 and 1000 plus. We were looking to have the bunker upgrades be a way for you to make this activity become easier, rather than just with power level alone, and a giant robot backing you up is hopefully doing the trick. Cosmo does point out that they have collected a lot of feedback asking to increase XP gains on completing activities. And personally I would be happy to see that, especially if Bungie could introduce the right kind of anti-AFK measures and things like that. But of course that XP grind the repetition of seasonal activities, the bounty grind. In the core of the seasonal content, these are very much recurring pieces of feedback, so as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the main things that do and don't work about seasons in the game at the moment. And especially where we are in the current season, the introduction of trials, which is a bit different. The balance of conversation has shifted a little bit, so once again, give us your thoughts down in the comment section. But for today, guys, that's everything that we have to speak about in the video. So if you have enjoyed this one, a rating down below really helps me out. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to get subscribed so I can keep you up to date with everything related to the game. Be sure also to check out my sponsor, Into the AM, who have some really cool clothing in their store, exclusive shirts, graphic hoodies, a bunch of different accessories, and you can save 10% by using code Houndish in the checkout. So if that sounds interesting, I will leave the link down below. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in, guys, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.